excited for the session. Hi, Maurizio, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm great.
Doing
Enjoying sunny
well.
London.
Yeah, another day in the flat. We're just talking about this, just being indoors and seeing the same four walls all the time. But at least
Yeah,
we're changing it up a bit today with a live stream, right?
there you go.
But today's the conversation I always dreamt to have, really, because I'm so fascinated about the process and kind of creative foundations that make music videos come to life. Sometimes making sense or sometimes not. So really interested to find out what makes a music video impactful and kind of respectful of the music that you're working with.
Mhm.
And I listened and watched some of these videos quite early this morning that you selected, and I must say that the Eden projector one was the highlight to start my day. And I also have a slight bias for the colors and grading that was used, so I'm looking forward to diving into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's kickstart a bit about you, your background, how you landed in the music industry, and specifically music videos. Yeah, tell us a bit more.
So I landed is the right word. I just sort of
Okay.
landed on it. I was having like a late 20s midlife crisis, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I had just been working in television for a few years, and I really didn't like it. And I sort of got a job like PMing in music videos, and I was like, oh, I really like this stressful life. So then I kept on going, and I just went very quickly from PM to producer and then became executive producer. But yeah, I just love the whole 4 days to prep and £10,000 budget life. I don't know why.
The
US.
stress,
Yeah,
the adrenaline, you're living for
I
it.
should, I should see a therapist, really. I mean,
Oh, this hour is very promising. I'm really excited. We're gonna
shall we do therapy here? Is
yeah,
that what we
exactly. The
think?
meltdown begins.
Yeah, great. It began 5 years ago when I started music videos. No, but it's an interesting world because I've been in contact with a lot of different facets in the filmmaking world, but I find music videos are like each different format has its own different language, right? And music videos just has this sort of, it's much freer, you don't have to abide by sort of like narrative rules, or you don't have to, you can go all out with things. And I think that's the most wonderful thing. You can create, I always say that a great word for a great compliment for a music video is calling it ridiculous, because when a music video is ridiculous, it's great. I'm like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. I love it. And I
Job done.
yeah, like, this is ridiculous. It makes no sense. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's what it should be. It should be this sort of like escape that at the same time kind of like touches upon something
Yeah.
very human in us.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you start in the industry? The music industry, especially, I think is quite, challenging in terms of network and contact. It's not like, we are talking about advertising before, where have your foot in the door working for, cat food brands, and we just talked about this, but the music industry feels a lot closer and very glamorous as well. So how does that work?
I think it's actually the contrary. I think in
Okay.
in commercials you have like a hierarchy that is very set.
Yeah.
So you go in and you do PAing for 3 years, and then you do PMing for 3 years, and then you do producing for 1,000 years, and then maybe one day you become an EP. And it's a much slower process because there's so much more at stake. When people are giving £5,000 to make a video, like, any kid who's willing is cool. You know what I mean? It's like all you need to do is have that hunger and get out and do stuff, like with that sort of like innocence of not knowing and sort of throwing yourself at things that anybody with experience would say this is not humanly possible, and yet you make it possible. So I think it's a great place for people to get their foot in the industry as a whole. A lot of people use it as a kind of like stepping stone into ad work or film work, because it's where you can show your wares and where people are more comfortable with risks. Like, we don't have 10 clients on set saying, oh, I don't like the shade of blue of their cap. you know, like it's kind of like get over it. It's a cap that we could afford, you know, and it's like it is what it is. So you
Yeah,
people are taking risks all the time, and for that reason, it means that kind of like young blood has much more of a chance to come in. You know, for people wanting to come into the industry, I would always say to kind of like reach out to music video departments in production
okay,
companies, and if you haven't got any experience at all, like get an internship, you know, and then just show your interest, show your passion, and then that will that will take you places that I'm a living example of, you know.
yeah, yeah.
um, you get that because people, they can smell that hunger, and they want that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And in terms of you were talking about passion and freedom, where does the artistic skill come from in terms of music videos? Like what background do you need to have to get into this industry? Or do you need one, or do you just need to have really various kind of creative interests like, fine art and, music and, and all sorts of different creative outlets? Or what is the typical background if there is one?
There isn't, no.
Yeah,
People, I think it's one of those things that people fall into. It's not like nobody, like, you know, is at school and they go, I want to be a
yeah,
music video producer. You know, it's like maybe they'll say, I want to be a producer, I want to be a director, or whatever.
yeah,
But I think as a director, it's like any path. I think you're just kind of like trying to find an outlet to have your voice heard, and it just so happens that it's kind of like the most readily available for people to be able to do that. And then as a producer, I think, yeah, you just have to have that sort of, you have to have fearlessness, because you're doing, a lot of the times you're faced with things, a lot of the times 95% of the times you're faced with things that just don't look possible. So you
yeah,
have to have this sort of trust that you'll get there, you know. And I think that's the only requirement. You could come from any path. You know, a lot of common sense and fearlessness is what you need to get stuff done. And if you have that, I feel like people succeed. You know, like I've seen a lot of my children, as I call them, growing up in the world, you know, and like being really good for themselves because they have those tracks. But you know, it's not like people come from a certain place. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So in a nice little world where, creative minds meet, it sounds very healthy. But you were talking about how much freedom you have as well, and this kind of it's ridiculous. And getting to that stage, do you have any kind of pushback? Because that sounds like a dream for most creatives to be able to work in a field where they have no limit. And do you feel like you have some, or you ever had any, or it can apart from budget, obviously, I think that's one
yeah. I
you'd
mean,
be
budget
mentioning.
number one.
Yeah,
The number
exactly.
one limit.
Otherwise, ridiculous could really get through.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we have money, I can do ridiculous on a whole new level. But no, I mean, you have way more freedom than in something like ads, but at the same time, you are serving an artist. And obviously, there are varying degrees of freedom that you have. There are artists who don't really care, and there's a commissioner who's just keen to do some great work, and they'll come and, like, you know, give you free reign and work with you collaboratively. Can't say that word.
Collaborative. That's all right. We got.
To create something really special. But sometimes the higher the budget gets, you know, when you are dealing with a big artist, like when you're dealing with Beyonce or Rihanna or something, like it's their world that you're coming into.
Yeah.
And you know, it's and there's always a sense of like, I am here to serve the music. Like, I think there's a big mistake in directors where they let their egos speak louder, and then they forget it's about something else, not them. And it should never be about you, because ego is a very destructive power, right? So you want to listen to the song and do justice to it and create visuals that really go with them. So there is a freedom, but it's like any freedom, it should be curbed at some point. You know, it
Yeah.
should be sort
Yeah.
of like checked and sort of, okay, who else am I serving in here, aside from myself? So there's a generosity that comes with that freedom as well, that needs to be there for something great to come.
really like that you're talking about molding yourself into their world, because that's such a nice way of seeing, respecting the work, like you said. And but how do you deal with the differences between, say, Beyonce and another artist who's maybe up and coming, and the differences in the way you are trying to maybe understand their identity at the beginning of their career, or what differences are there? And I'm assuming there's good in both, in terms of working for you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you're doing a big budget thing,
Yeah.
I love doing a big budget video. Like there's something like when you have all the toys and when you have all this world, it's much more controlled and you are much more hired for a job than with a small budget with an emerging artist. With an emerging artist, you are helping to shape their image. So it's, the commissioner will come with an idea in their head that the label and the artists have come up with about how they see themselves out in the world. And you're sort of trying to help that by creating visuals for it. And that's really exciting, like when you're part of shaping what an artist's identity feels like. So again, you always have to pay heed to that outside world, that outside voice that goes like, okay, I owe something to this person um, to make them look good to the world.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think
definitely.
that's,
And yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, that I was just gonna say that was one of the criteria that we had on judging D&AD was, is it fit for purpose? And I think that is exactly what that means. It's is this video doing justice to the musician and to the song? Like, and that can be at any level, but like when you're in a smaller level, like in a smaller like budget level, you have so much more responsibility because you're creating that image of an artist who is not that well known. So it's you can't wear that responsibility lightly.
And you were saying that you kind of serve the music and the artist. So how does it feel when you, especially as you said, for someone who might be beginning or you're still shaping this identity, do you feel that you might get it wrong, and you have, or how does that feel? And
All the
would
time.
the right? Okay. Please make it feel real that you are not all like perfect human beings.
No, but no. Do you know how many videos get canned all the time? Like videos
No,
get
I don't, which is why I'm asking.
so many.
Okay.
Like it's not even something that like when a video gets canned, like it's sort of like you get upset because obviously nobody got paid properly, and you're like you've
Yeah.
pulled all these favors, and it's like and sometimes it's stuff like the artist didn't read the treatment properly. So then when they get to the edit, they're like, oh, I don't like this video. And I'm like, but it's exactly the video that we proposed. And they're like, yeah, I don't like the idea. And I'm like, oh, that's a bit late, isn't it? Um, but it's, yeah, we get it wrong all the time because we're trying things in the harshest possible conditions with people who aren't necessarily, they haven't cut their teeth. This is like an advanced film school, if you will, and people are learning as they go. So you commit mistakes all the time, and we're human, and we always screw up, like it's
Yeah.
part of who we are. Oh, we screw up more than anyone in music videos. Don't worry about that. We're far from perfect.
And how much time do you spend with the arts and music itself before you're able to, how does the process actually work from concept all the way to actually producing? And I'm sure we'll talk about, how much time it takes, because I was mind blown by some of the videos you selected, and just finding out and doing a bit of research on how much time was spent just producing them. It's completely ridiculous, like you said, from start to finish. So yeah, how's that process handled? If you can give us a bit of insight into.
I mean, usually we have very little time to make things.
Yeah,
It's also got to do with the fact that the music industry is by and large reactive, and they have to react to the algorithm as it goes, and then suddenly a track is doing really well on Spotify, and they're like, we have to make a video now. and it's run, run, run. And also by default, artists and management, they're quite messy institutions, you know, like it's they go with a heart and with a gut, and it's kind of like must do this now, and then everybody's just scrambling around trying to. So it can be, it's usually quite messy, but usually the way that it works is that we'll get commissioners. Commissioners are hired by the label to put briefs out that they'll send to production companies, who will then, you know, they'll either ask for specific directors or they'll ask for recommendations. So they'll come to Academy and be like, what are sort of people that you think would be good for this track? Then they'll have a budget and dates and everything, and then we'll get somebody to treat on the videos, and then and then they'll make a treatment, and then if picked, then we'll go into like developing it further and then producing it for the 5 days that they give us or whatever, you know, like.
Wow.
And it's quite toxic because it became the sort of rule that people just can produce things quickly, so they have it in their heads that like, oh, we can just do this really quickly. But I'm personally trying to tell labels and commissioners like we need 2 weeks for anything, and that's kind of like I've been successful in the past ones that we've had a couple of weeks to produce something, and it makes all the difference. You know, it makes all the difference in the detail that you can get, in the sort of crews that you can like get just with a bit of time ahead to be able to book people and stuff. But it's, yeah, it can be quite messy.
Chaotic.
Yeah.
Sounds like creative chaos. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
That's some good creative juices, Mike.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm living through this.
Yeah.
And how do you feel? And chaos is everywhere right now, especially this year, given the current circumstance. And how do you feel this year is going to be changing the industry and the way you work, and able to jump onto some of these crazy requests? And what are the next challenges that are coming up?
I mean, nobody knows. I mean,
Give us an answer. Help us.
sorry, can't answer that one. I think the world is changing in ways that we can't even imagine yet, and I think only time will tell what the long term effects of what we're living now will be. But in like an immediate sort of way, how we're doing things now is that we're just, as ever, we have to be creative and adapt. And this is something that we do day in, day out because of budget restrictions and time restrictions. We're always having to think, how do I make this happen? You know, we don't have the luxury of like having all this time and money that we can just sort of like sit there and imagine this whole world that we can fully build, you know, because we have 6-digit figures. So we're used to adapting. We're kind of like the cockroaches of the industry. Somebody said that to me, and I thought it was really great. When everything else is gone, music videos will remain. And,
You're like, I'm safe. I have a job
yeah,
forever.
I'll survive no matter what.
You're like holding on to anything.
Yeah. But I think you really see that because there's so much more music video world being produced right now than there is like ads, because they don't know how to adapt as easily to things.
Yeah.
And we're already predisposed to that. So, you know, like during lockdown, it was difficult because everybody was like holding their money and not really spending anything. There was very few briefs going out. But we were trying to pitch and stuff, and like we were pitching the whole time that we were on lockdown, and like deep lockdown. And it was like, what are the ideas that we can make work in this current situation? And like the stuff that people would come up with is like incredible, you know, like there's resilience, and there's that fire doesn't get spent, you know. But in the long term, I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea what this world would look like. I think we're also looking much more locally at stories,
Yeah.
which is an interesting thing. I think there's quite an easy sort of let's go abroad and shoot because we love being abroad, I guess. But it's kind of like an easy escape. It's like, let's go somewhere beautiful and like shoot there. And I think now we're sort of thinking double about how to make a good video with this gray skies that God gave us. Yeah.
And by the way, you're based in London for anyone who watch well, so this is why you're saying.
I think they would figure that out as soon as they said gray skies,
Yeah,
right?
they were like, "All right, okay, same as everyone." Everyone's looking outside.
But
Yeah, no, I really like this kind of approach of also thinking smaller scale and almost now setting some new standards for the industry. So, do with what you have, kind of situation. And I mean, some industries are going to be more effective than others, as you said. But somehow, from my end, I found the creative industry in general to be incredibly, adaptable during this time. And for
and
example, if we, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, go on, sorry, sorry.
No, no, I was going to say if we think about even the D&AD Awards, we're doing this now online, and you were able to judge the process online as well. So that's something I'm really keen to hear about as well, in terms of your process. But yeah, you were going to say as well.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and we can talk
Yeah,
about that at length. But it's
yeah,
just I was going to mention something like Michel Gondry, who Gondry, who always made these things that were so DIY and that you can do in your living room if you want, and
yeah,
you can make greatness with very little. And there's a lot of music videos out there that prove that point.
yeah.
And it's almost the contrary. The moment that you try too hard, people see through that, and it's kind of like, yeah, like you want something that comes from the heart and that comes from like comes from both the mind and the heart, and it's just clever and not trying too hard. When you
Yeah.
have all the toys and when you have everything, it's like it's almost too easy. It's kind of like, okay,
It's like a spoiled child with everything they
yeah, yeah,
want. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And I think we were all more creative growing up with just, a stick and a couple stones that we found on the street, and being able to, make up scenarios and things with our own creativity. So it almost becomes over saturated with
Yes.
budget and opportunities and I guess a good challenge. And I like that everyone is reframing this as a good opportunity to change the industry a little bit and the standard.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you have to see the silver
let's,
linings,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah, exactly. You're like, we have no option, Emma.
we have no option. What we're gonna do? Sit here and cry and not work? No, we're gonna
Well, this
figure it out.
therapy is going really well.
Yeah, I told you we're the cockroaches. We're like we're never gonna give up.
Exactly. But let's talk a bit more about D&AD, because the session is about that as well. And I really want to hear about the submissions you selected. How was the experience of judging? How does it work? Tell everyone who's watching how you were involved and selected some of these submissions.
So it's quite interesting. I was actually quite scared that like people would be like no, and like fighting for things they liked and they didn't. But it was actually quite a nice
You were
organic.
like, disappointingly, I did not argue.
Yeah,
You were like, I'm ready.
anyone. I made friends. But no, we had hours to discuss these things, and it was informative, and it was humbling to kind of put my notions aside and hear what other people had to say and how they felt and how they saw things. What was really interesting about this D&AD Zoom situation was that we had people from every possible continent judging this stuff, and I think uh, that really meant something, because you had, there was a judge who was in Australia, and she's like half Asian, and then there was somebody in South Africa, there was like me in London, and people were all coming with their different points of views, which is so refreshing in an industry where everybody's white and everybody's from middle class and it was like, there were all these different people just coming in from their different experiences and points of views, and it felt really enriching for it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it more than I ever thought I would.
I love that. This is great. Just such a positive experience from your end, and everyone has. I think there's some categories that had a little bit more debate than others, and I'm excited to hear how you selected some of the work. And we're like time is flying, so I really want to get into some of them. And the first one you selected is the Eden projector. So Eden released a new album called The Future, which is his second album, if I'm not wrong. He's an Irish musician, and I actually love a couple of their songs, including Gold, which is from the previous album, I think. But I definitely recommend everyone at home to have a flick through what he produced, and hopefully this entry will get you hooked onto his music. But I think this one has quite an interesting message within the conversations that are shaping up in the world right now, and whether this is some of the feelings of lockdown, like we said, and restrictions of movement, which has brought a lot of questions to the world, but also really necessary conversations around Black Lives Matter and gender. So let's maybe just watch the video and we can talk about it a bit more afterwards, and how you selected this one.
Oh,
Let's do it.
Touch me and slip away. I can't hide it out of place. I can't function on my mistake. Thought you were someone I once knew. I was like ahead of me. Thoughts in my head don't disappear. I was a maybe that made you the truth. In time I will come to see it for how it really was. In my mind it's only false faces whisper love. If they're feeling at a price, then I would gladly pay it over and over and over till I'm broke. And if you hold me for ransom, I'd love it, I never wanna go. But all this hypothetical thinking is digging me down. And maybe I was seconds away, but it doesn't matter now. Death only seconds away, so no, it don't matter now.
何かが消えてしまったという感覚だけが目覚めてからも長く残る。
Touch me and slip away. I can't hide feeling out of place. I can't function on my mistake. Thought you were someone I once knew. Oh, yeah. Flight years ahead of me. Voices in my head don't disappear. I was a maybe that made you true. In time I will come to love it for how it really was. In my mind it's only false faces where see. If they're feeling at a price, then I will gladly pay it over and over and over till I'm broke. And if you hold me for ransom, I love it, I never wanna go. But all this hypothetical thinking is digging me down. And maybe I was seconds away, but it doesn't matter now. Keep death only seconds away, so no, it don't matter now.
All right. I think everyone saw it. And we have Robert in the chat who's saying he really likes the color palette. And this is why I also really enjoyed watching this one. Tell us more what you picked, this one specifically. And yeah, just some of the experience judging it.
So the three criteria that we had
Yeah.
when we were judging it was, is the idea inspiring? Is it brilliantly executed? Is it fit for purpose? And I think, we broke that down a little bit. And, is the idea inspiring? Is it novel in some way? Does it surprise me? Does it sort of like, does it give me a breath of fresh air? Is it brilliantly executed? Is quite self-explanatory. And is it fit for purpose? Is what I mentioned before about, does it do a good service to the artist and the song? So we're considering all those things when judging things, and that really helps to sort of like, weed out all the great from the good. But with this one in particular, I think it's again, it does something really simple but really well. And at the same time, when you look at all the different aspects of it, it's not that simple. You know what I mean? There's a kind of like an intricate simplicity to it that is much appreciated by the people who make this day in, day out. Just the way that the production design is so well married to the cinematography and to the lighting and to the costume and to the movement, and everything is just put together in a way that it just works. There's a correlation between all these different elements that make a great video, and again, you don't need all the fireworks. You don't need, I'm sure they didn't have loads of money to do that, and they did something with a lot of thought and a lot of passion, and something great came out.
It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. And actually, this ties in really nicely to a question that we have in the chat from Robert, who says, does Maurizio think that music videos became too clever? And graphic design best practice is that everything has to have a raison d'être, not just look good.
Yes, 100%. I think people overcomplicate things all the time. And I think a lot of the times we don't get jobs because we try to out clever ourselves. And then you see the videos that they do, and it's something really simple and well executed. You've got, people just overthink things, and they try to show how clever they are. And that's when they're doing things that don't come from the heart. And I think this is so cheesy and it's so like hippie talk, but it's true. Like when you do something that comes out of your gut and it comes out of your heart, good things come out of it. And you don't do it. I think when people are trying to be super clever, they are doing things to win a D&AD. And they're thinking about the awards, like, this is gonna get all these awards, and I'm gonna get myself like, I'm gonna be the best director at the KMVAs. And this is incidental. All of this is incidental. It's a nice little cherry on the cake. It's like, oh wow, that's nice, people liked what I did. But that can't be your guiding motivation. Like, you have to do something that you believe in, that you feel passionate about, that really comes from within you, and it's your point of view of the world in some way. And then that's when things win awards and do well.
Yeah, I like the simplicity as well that you talked about this, because it's quite powerful in this example that the simplicity of it means there's room for interpretation for the viewer, and it can be quite powerful. I always found that music can be enjoyed on so many different levels in terms of lyrics, but now lyrics are coming to life with videos, and that leaves room for the viewer to have their own little piece of an experience of the music as well, without all the cheating toys, like you said, that add on a bit of a busy, saturated space.
Totally. And it's a space for abstraction as well, music videos. It's not a place where you should be loyal to the world around you in every way. Like, nobody wants to see a video that just sort of talks about real life or everyday life. Like, it's a space for abstraction. Music calls for that. It's as you say, music touches each person in a particular way. It's not like maybe a narrative piece that has a real agenda and a real message to get across, and it's like very firm. It's a much more fluid world where people should interpret as they see fit.
And did you see consistency in all the? I know you selected quite different, submissions and work that we're going to look at, but did you see any kind of recurring theme in terms of being drawn to work that was a bit more loose in this way, or was there complete different approaches in this?
Stop burning. Can you all just stop? Burn stuff. I can't.
It's bad for the environment, guys.
A is bad for the environment. B, it's too easy. Like the amount of videos where like a car is burning, a mattress is burning, a house is burning. I'm tired. I am tired. I don't want to see anything burning. There's like, it's the visual cliches, right? And I think it comes from work that has been awarded previously, and that's when you see through things, that it's kind of like, oh yeah, this video did this, so we're going to do that and then add something else. It's like it comes from a very cynical place, or it comes from like quite I'm always checking my directors when they come and they say, and then we're going to have something burning. I'm like, take that out right now.
That's it. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Not burning anything. I am not here for burning things. Like give me Betty Blue burning her house. Like that made sense. You know what I mean? Like that had a reason for her character that meant something for the film. It wasn't just a cool image, And there's a lot of cool images that we see that we've seen over and over and over and over and over again, and it's kind of like detach yourself from everything that you've been seeing in music videos. Like if you want to reference, go back to bloody Pasolini and Truffaut, and like I don't bloody go to Wong Kar-wai, like go to like real references, like reference like Michelangelo's golden whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking anymore, but like go deep into things. Like
you're dropping. I like it.
Yeah, don't like like you see so much of it that is like just more of the same of like what was cool last month, and then we see it again and again and again. And we did, obviously we saw that every year. You see that.
And I like that you mentioned this topic as well, because we're touching on innovation, and this is something that other categories brought as well in the previous weeks, which is they were drawn to seeing something they hadn't seen before, and it's kind of novel and approaches work differently, and we're this kind of new challenge that we're taking on to, instead of kind of copying and doing things for the sake of it, are actually really thought through. And did you feel you saw this in any of the videos, something that you just hadn't seen before or was quite inspiring to you?
Yeah, I think, it's a tough one to define because everything's been seen before, right? Like there's nothing new, but there's different approaches to old things, and there's different takes and sort of refreshing ways to look at things. And I think those videos that I picked, they all do something novel, like the Zidane projector video. I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint and put into words, but there's something about it that you're just sort of like, oh, okay, this world, I hadn't seen this whole world like this and put together in such a way. Okay, this is new, like there's something new in here. They're trying to go somewhere else. Yes, did I answer your question?
Yes. Okay. Don't worry. We're good. I'll poke at you if I miss something. But we can go into the next one, which is Zebra Cat's Lousy, which you selected, and it was really interesting as well in terms of the length of it, because we're talking about real kind of short film, right? In terms of this selection, and so before we watch it, do you want to tell us a bit more about why you selected it?
So before we watch it,
should we play it, or what do you want? Or should we not spoil it? First, watch kind of 2-3 minutes of it. It's quite long.
Let's watch it first. Sorry,
let's watch it. No, that's all right. I'm changing things up. Let's play kind of 2-3 minutes. Otherwise, we'll lose track of time. Yeah, exactly.
Z lousy. Kitty kill the mouse, he too damn cloudy. Trapped in his house, he never could arouse me. Too damn saucy, lean on me. Now he drowsy, drugs without me. Oh, it couldn't be. Please forgive me, I'm too bossy. Hit the party, paparazzi all on me. Plane crash, kamikaze. Off my lips to microphone. Welcome to the zebra zone. Through the speakers to your dome. Never have to be alone. At the function or at home. Flow equipped is ready to go. All aboard this rodeo. Saddle up, enjoy the show. Hope that you'll be back for more. What it do though? Hit it real slow. Would you like that? What you want more? Give it to you good. Hit it till you blow. Amateur pro. I do it like a hoe. One bad bitch, but you already know. Yo, what it do? Is it Road GQ interview? On the runway, ready for the shoot. Glam squad got me looking hella cute. Yo, I'm in the mood. No, I can't stand still, I gotta move. On the dance floor, I need room. Yo, ZK, drop the tune. When I'm locked in, ain't no stopping. I'm so pop.
All right, and we're back. So everyone who's watching, you can, follow up on the link. We'll share it in the chat to make sure that you're able to see the rest of the video information. But for the sake of time, and we also want to hear more from Maurizio, so we'll make sure to cut them a little bit earlier and discuss. But yeah, so this one specifically was directed by Swedish director Daniel Rutberg, if I'm not wrong, and is a whole kind of 9-minute film based in Sweden. And it was described as soft and hard masculinity between introvert and extrovert. So what drew you to this selection, and how was it discussing with the jury?
I think it was precisely the depiction of masculinity that is so layered and so unseen. You know what I mean? Like we've had a lot of conversations in the past few years with Me Too and now with Black Lives Matter about kind of like the place of the disenfranchised in society. But when you talk about there hasn't been much of a look at masculinity and its toxicity as well, and its fragility as well, and its nuance, because there were more important things to talk about first, but I think it's great to see something, especially seeing Black men portrayed in this light. It's really something that we don't usually see. It's not something that is out there in music videos at large, so it's great to have a music video that is done so beautifully, and with such dexterity, and at the same time it's touching upon something that I feel we should be talking about.
Yeah. And do you feel that music videos have a responsibility to do that? Or, I think when you're talking burning things and all the way to some of the deeper messaging, I guess it's not only responsibility, but have the power to do that as a platform as well.
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't say we have a responsibility, because music videos can serve a lot of different purposes, right? And I am here to entertain as well. Like I am here for people to escape and to create a big plastic, fantastic world where you're just like, yes, you know, but like there's also another world in music videos where you can question the world around you, and um, you can be challenging notions, you know. And I think that's when you go down that route, you've got two paths you can choose, and when you go down that route, you you have a great responsibility to question yourself and question everybody around you as to what you're doing, and getting a message across, if that's what you're trying to do, that is relevant and that is considerate, and that is and especially if you are getting into a world that is not your own, you have to go at it with humility and with open ears to allow others to tell their story and for you to be able to kind of like visualize that. And I think this video did that, you know, like it's kind of like it's going somewhere where we don't usually go, and it's going with a lot of respect. Um, there's, you know, there's no stereotypes in there. There's no,
Yeah.
I respect that.
And there was something I wanted to touch on, which is not only messaging but also style, because I know there's two videos that you were keen to show, and I was also really happy with that choice, because we're seeing a bit of a return of kind of 70s, 80s inspiration coming across. And two of the videos we're talking about are the Dua Lipa one, and also Final Form, which I want to make sure we have time for. But what are your opinion on this and the kind of stylistic approach we have? That's returning, and maybe in terms of phases as well, kind of making a bit of a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, we always do that, don't we? I think it goes kind of like in increments of 20 years. So,
Yeah.
We've done the 90s, now we're going sort of like back to the 70s. A lot of people are releasing disco-inspired music. There's a lot of albums coming out that have that sort of like influence in them. I mean, I have no idea why we go back to certain things together at the same time, but we're there now, and it's
2040. I'm just saying, 2040 is going to be awful because they'll be looking at 2020, and it was such an awful year.
No style.
Music
Everybody's
videos are just
wearing,
screwed.
yeah, everybody's just
Yeah.
jogging tracks, and like tracks
in their apartments, stuck.
Yeah, looking sad.
For sure.
Really pale.
Hopefully, I'm still alive to see this, but cannot wait. But no, really, like it is this kind of phase that you're seeing, and this fine line of, all right, we've seen this already, 70s, 80s covered, or actually we're really excited to bring this back and have it in a new way that's has still room to be interpreted and represented. And the Dua Lipa video is an example of that, where it's taking inspiration from the 83 film Flashdance, right? And it's bringing in those lyrics around excitement of falling in love in a very new upbeat way as well. So maybe we should just play the video as well, and then chat about it. Let's go for it.
How hard could this really be?
We're ready when you are.
Coming. Common love isn't for us. We created something phenomenal. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? You got me feeling diamond rich. Nothing on this planet compares to it. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? Who needs to go to sleep when I got you next to me? All night, I ride with you. I know you got my back, and you know I got you. So come on, come on, come on. Let's get physical. Lights out, follow the noise. Baby, keep on dancing like you ain't got a choice. So come on, come on, come on. Let's get physical. Adrenaline keeps on rushing in. Love the simulation we're dreaming in. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? I don't wanna live another life, 'cause this one's pretty nice. Living it up. Who needs to go to sleep when I got you next to me? All night, I ride with you. I know you got my back, and you know I got you. So come on, come on, come on. Let's get physical. Lights out, follow the noise. Baby, keep on dancing like you ain't got a choice. So come on, come on, come on. Let's get physical. Hold on, just a little tighter. Come on, hold on. Tell me if you're ready.
All right. I think our streams have never been so upbeat with, music. So it's so nice to see finally a little bit of, energy as well. But we were talking a bit earlier about production, and I was reading that this video was shot over the time span of 316-hour working days. So just some, it's stats to throw out there, but just to, giving a sense to everyone of how much work goes behind these music videos, and within what kind of time frame as well. But tell us more about why you selected this one.
Well, first of all, I think every music video is at least 14 hours and like
Mad.
16 hours and like, plus.
It's crazy.
Yes, and I was talking to a DOP who told me he did another Dua Lipa video that they did a 23-hour day, which is insane. But I know I've done those too.
You're like, it's all coming back, the memories.
trauma.
Now we're getting there. Therapy's at peak.
It's when they start breaking down and crying.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes. We made it.
And I think this is a bone I tried to pick with the jury, and I lost because we only gave it a pencil for production design, and I absolutely love this video. I would have given it a silver pencil for the best music video. But I think I think it's a great contrast to the other two videos in that it does something else, and that is okay. I think we as an industry are so fixated with what does well in awards, and then you have a video that will have 50,000 views and won't have much of a cultural impact, but will be really great. So that's worth, bringing up and sort of showing to the world. But then at the same time, something that has 1 billion views and that is done wonderfully also has merit. I think people can look down on big pop numbers, but if done well, which this Dua Lipa video is, I'm not saying every big pop video is great because there's a lot of bad videos out there, but this is done so well and to such a level, and it's fun, it's silly, it's ridiculous,
We got there. There you
right?
go.
It's
Example, we
ridiculous.
pinpointed it.
This is it. This is what I'm talking about, and it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it's just this big vision that like I dream of sets like that, when you can just sort of like bring all this stuff together and it's huge and it's got like dancing and it's got all the production design and every bloody light in Barcelona.
That's
And
where it was shot, right? It was in Barcelona. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and there's like
It's
huge
amazing.
warehouse
Yeah.
that is like apparently it was something there wasn't any studios that was as big as they needed, so they had to like find this one space in Barcelona that was the biggest possible space they could find and hire that. But like there's something about the ambition and the scale of that, and then the success at transmitting that vision across, that I think is just phenomenal.
And what do you feel was the debate on, because you were mentioning that you were, completely on board with this, and you were like, oh, the pencils, let's just do it. What was the kind of debate to not do that, and what pushback or kind of little discussions were around this video specifically that still were left?
I think I think people were just, like no, people thought there wasn't anything particularly new in that, which I
Okay.
disagree, because I feel like
Yeah.
there is something new in that video. There is a new proposal within that world. I think that's really important. You know what I mean? Like we are looking at videos that belong to different worlds. And as I said before about the whole thing about paying heed to your artists and what they need, you can't do a Lipa like in 16 mil, like agonizing, like you can't do Radiohead for Dua Lipa. Like
Yeah.
she just inhabits her own world, and that's fine. Like the fact that she's trying to do something very different from most female artists out there in the world right now, it really, I think it's commendable, and I think it's yeah, but I didn't win that fight.
You're still hurt.
So bitter, so bitter. Hot
Wait, we
first
started
place.
this conversation saying that it was amazing, you made so many friends, and
Hate them
suddenly
all.
you're.
No, I don't.
So I hope people kept on watching just to get the real deal.
I love
We
them
got
all.
there. No, it was no. You were honest, and it was a great experience, I'm sure. But it's just interesting to see what people kind of, kind of fight for and have their own little battles and points of view, because this is what
Yeah.
those debates are about, and judging. As
I
it's
mean, I like, what I mean? Like, it wasn't, I just tried to make a point. And it was like, everybody listened. I was like, can we reconsider this? Because this,
Yeah.
and that. Made my case. And then it
Yeah.
went to the vote, and then majority won. And then, that's that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
you accept that. And
No
you're
one
like,
was hurt. There was
no,
very.
I'll just come here and say the truth. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
joking. I love all of you who are in the panel.
I love that. And but also you were mentioning what female artists are doing differently, and we won't have time for this today, but I really wanted to mention Final Form video with Sampa, which everyone should kind of watch as well, because that's also a really inspiring approach to immersing yourself into someone's world through a music video. If you have any kind of words on this one quickly before we wrap up,
Yeah,
would be great.
I think it's it was directed by a man of Asian descent for a Zambian artist.
Yeah.
It was Zambia, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And they went to Zambia and they filmed it in a way that you can just feel it's not a white man doing it, and I think that's really important. Like, we've seen white man's version of Africa time and again, and there's always a goat and smiling children. And I don't want to see goats in Africa no more. It's like I want to see what I saw in that video. And I want to see different points of views. And I think I found out his ancestry afterwards. I hadn't looked into it, but you can just sense a different take on things. You know, it's
Yeah.
not fetishizing Africanness or blackness. It's kind of like it's looking at it from a different place, and I think that's appreciated and noticed.
Yeah, and very fitting. So I really wanted to mention that one, and hope everyone watching can tune in and take a look at the video as well. And the music's great. It's such a powerful anthem that I loved it. But we're running out of time actually, and we covered quite a lot and had a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed the conversation. But wanted to finish up on some kind of final words you had. Any advice for the next generation of music video producers? Bearing in mind that we're having a lot of changes coming up this year and the next years. But what's your general advice on, whether it's starting an industry or finding, your way, avoiding any fire and burning, and yeah, just kind of making your mark in this industry.
I think the world is changing, and not just because of COVID, but also what we're seeing now with BLM. It means that we are finally looking for different points of views. Finally, it's been a slap in the face, and it's been, companies have had to scramble in order to adapt very quickly to something they should have been adapting for years. But I think now we're at the point of no return. So for anybody entering this world, I would say bear this in mind, that the world will never look the same again, and thank God for that. Look for different points of views. Look for people to surround you, to be heads of departments who are different from you, who, if you are telling the story of a Black artist, try to populate your crew with as many heads of department who are also Black, who will get the points of reference, who will get the point of view. We're in an internationalist world being run by white people, and that has to be shared out from this point on. So anybody entering this world, I would just say you have a personal level of responsibility to creating stories and to creating visuals that are more honest and that are more in tune with the world that surrounds us than we've seen thus far.
I really appreciate that, and thanks for finishing on this kind of touch, on open-mindedness and diversity, because I think it is a really important topic. And I must say that all the juries we've had have just been phenomenal in mentioning these conversations, and also having a real role and responsibility, like you said, to reflect this in their field. So, great note to finish up. And I want to say thank you so much for your time today, because we had, some great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up, and we'll see you all next week at 10 UK time, 10 to 11, for another session of D&AD Presents and the awards. So thank you so much, Maurizio.
Thank you. It was a
Bye.
pleasure. Bye.
Bye, everyone.